If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. It's 9:47 on a Tuesday morning. Coordinated attacks hit 6 American cities at the same time. Active shooter sprees at a mall in Phoenix, a bomb detonation at a transit hub in Chicago, a vehicle ramming outside a hospital in Dallas. Mass casualty events stacking on top of each other in real time. 911 lines jammed within 4 minutes. EMS is stretched to nothing. Police are locked to the highest priority scenes, and entire neighborhoods go dark. Response times measured in minutes are now measured in hours, and for some, they disappear completely. This is the core of what we're covering tonight. When that day comes, no one is coming for you. This is your warning. The embedded jihadi network is the primary hostile system driving the threat to the American homeland. It operates through a layered architecture of activated sleeper cells, ISIS-inspired lone actors, Hezbollah-linked operatives, and IRGC-directed assets that have been pre-positioned inside the United States. It's not reactive, it's patient, pre-planned, and engineered to strike multiple targets simultaneously to overwhelm response capacity. This is exactly what they want, not just casualties, but the collapse of the emergency response infrastructure that Americans depend on as their first line of survival. They want you to dial 911 and get nothing. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News. It's April 26, 2026. April 16th, 2026. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined by combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nansen, 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD. Bottom line up front, a coordinated jihadi attack on American soil will not just produce casualties, it will collapse the emergency response system within minutes, leaving entire neighborhoods without police, fire, or EMS coverage, and 911 lines completely jammed. Every American's survival plan is built on the assumption that 911 works. Tonight, we break down why that assumption is a liability, not a safety net. What we're covering tonight is how the response system fails structurally and what that failure looks like at the street level, and what every guardian needs to have in place before that day arrives. We're going to go directly into segment number 1, institutional breakdown, how emergency infrastructure fails under coordinated attack. Emergency response systems in America were engineered for isolated sequential incidents, not simultaneous multi-site coordinated attacks. And when jihadis execute concurrent strikes across multiple zones, the dispatch infrastructure collapses almost immediately as call volume spikes beyond anything the system was designed to absorb. The cascading failure is structural and predictable. 911 centers get buried under redundant civilian calls, radio channels saturate with responder traffic, computer-aided dispatch systems hit their limits, and units that could theoretically respond are gridlocked behind civilian panic and abandoned vehicles. Once the coverage map goes dark across multiple zones simultaneously, mutual aid requests enter a queue that takes time to process, and federal assistance by the government's own projections do not reach local communities for 12 to 24 hours after the request is made, which itself may not go out for hours after the first strike. Going to Jeff MD first, as usual. Jeff, at what point in a multi-site coordinated attack does a 911 dispatch center actually become non-functional? And what does that look like from the inside?
Well, it becomes non-functional when it gets more calls than it can process. Because they've got to triage calls anyway, because if there's going to be an attack of any kind, of explosion, something like that, they're going to get inundated with calls, all basically saying the same thing. There was an explosion over here. Okay, no kidding. We know that. But then you're also going to get calls if there's coordinated attacks and there's other attacks. They're going to get calls from people say, hey, wait, there was something over here too. And they're going to go, okay, wait a minute, we're still working on this one. They're just going to get flooded. And there's a limited number of people who answer the phones for 911, and they have a limited amount of personal bandwidth to process it. So, they're going to have to try and do triage, but it's going to be mayhem at first. The 911 system will collapse just because it's not designed to handle that volume of calls.
I don't even know how you would design it to handle that volume. But Randy, it's been a minute since you were on an ambulance, but how does, when the civilian call volume, starts to go up, how does that accelerate the collapse of dispatch capacity? Like, I'm curious, when you were on an ambulance, Randy, if there were any major events that came up and you guys were flooded with the same calls from multiple people, and it made dispatch a challenge.
Well, I wasn't really a part of it because it was a tiny bit before me, but I think it was Flight 191, right, that crashed, the Delta airline that crashed here in DFW, where it bounced off the freeway first. And, that drew a lot of people and services. But let's just go and take 9/11, right? If we look at 9/11, you can imagine that probably after the first building was hit, 911 was probably swamped at that point, I would imagine. But to the point of even like these coordinated attacks where it's kind of similar, is if we look at, when the buildings fell, how many, wasn't it like 300 officers and 300 or something roughly, both in the police department and the fire department, right, that lost those personnel in that actual collapse, right? And then we'll just go to what the normal things, what I told you before, where it works for 911, and this is all city municipalities, because you can't have, like in Dallas, you can't just have 1,000 ambulances on duty 24 hours a day waiting for things to happen. So what happens when one ambulance gets a call and the dispatcher takes the call, they call the appropriate ambulance, and that ambulance moves to go, handle the call. So, and in some municipalities, they may have to contact one or two, maybe even three more crews and let them know. So as I mentioned before, and then those units will go out, if they're not already out in the community, say they're at their station for whatever reason, then they leave in the ambulance and they go post at a particular, there's a spot that they picked in the city that's in their sector, and between their sector and the ambulance, it's now running a call. And it will go post there in case they get a call. So you can see if you got a bunch of calls in succession, the next thing you know, you're not going to really have an available ambulance because you've already used all those assets. And then let's take it on like September 11th. And once the collapse happens, then you lost vehicles, personnel, and it's almost impossible to recover at that that level of an event. But even normal things where, we look at sometimes, like I would imagine the next day after 70 tornadoes hit Oklahoma one night a few years back, you can imagine the amount of calls and the amount of that came from that type of response, or even the hurricanes in Florida after it's gone through and the cleanup. All the sources are already taxed. So if you keep multiplying that, sooner or later, and it's sooner, it just collapses because there is no more services. And as we all know, whether it be phones or computers, just like when you set up Element and they did those STD tags, your stuff can get too much response, it just shuts down.
Yeah, a good example. So from 9/11, by the way, there were 343 firefighters who were killed, 23 NYPD and 37 from the Port Authority.
Oh, okay. I thought more police officers were there too, but still, you think about that's a pretty big additional number and asset as far as New York City's ability to answer emergency situations at that time.
It was 403 heroes that lost their lives. Yeah. And I had Will Jamanko on a couple years back, Randy, and it was one of the episodes that you couldn't join us for. And he's one of only 2 people who were pulled from the rubble. He was a Port Authority cop. And they didn't even know what was going on when they got there, right? So they got a call on their radio, and he was Port Authority, and it said, get to this substation where it's all hands on deck sort of thing, right? So he gets there, and the only information that they had was that a plane had hit one of the towers, but they didn't know anything beyond that. So they put them on a bus, these Port Authority cops, and they're heading towards the Twin Towers. They heard the second plane hit the second tower. They couldn't see it because they're on the bus. They get off the bus, and he was with his sergeant. There were 5 of them together, and they walked in, and at the last second, the sergeant decided to turn left and go into the first tower instead of going right and going into the second tower. And they no sooner got into the main building than it collapsed. And there were a couple of his guys that were killed instantly. 3 of them were still alive, trapped in the rubble, right? So his sergeant wasn't too far from him, but his sergeant was lower than he was. And then there was another guy who was actually even closer. And the guy who was even closer was so close to the flames that if anybody can relate to it, Randy, it would be you. Not only did he get burned alive, which is beyond comprehension for the rest of us, but it cooked off a bunch of his ammunition, and there were bullets flying all over the place. And, Will and his sergeant are trapped, pinned, and there's, bullets flying, the other guy's screaming. The next day, they retrieved Will the next morning out of the debris. And shortly after that, they retrieved his sergeant. But those are the only 2 guys who survived. Absolutely just insane story, Randy. Like, just crazy to hear from the guys who were actually there.
Yeah,
and then,
I can't even imagine, because that lasted for him for at least a couple of hours, maybe longer, maybe 3 or 4 hours before they got him out, and he had to
24 hours. It was the next morning.
Oh goodness, man.
Yeah.
But the guy had already died. But I'm talking about during that period of. But either way, though, man, it's just not a good. It's a terrible situation, man. Good for him for surviving, but boy, he has to live with a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. And no joking about Mar-a-Lago or anything, but last time Cindy and I were at Mar-a-Lago, it was for law enforcement. It was called the Big Blue Bash. We had 4 former NYPD detectives sitting at our table, Randy, and all of them had health problems that were a direct result of 9/11. One of them, or 2 of them, pardon me, had cancer, and they both recovered. And of course, all of them live in Florida now, because anybody who knows anything about Florida, it starts at Jacksonville and ends at St. Augustine. Everything south there's an extension of New York. Right. But they joke around. They call West Palm area, New York South, but it's not really that much of a joke.
Well, me, I always made fun of them. I'm like, you live in New York City where you never drive, and then you want to come take vacation in Florida to use your driver's license. Are you an idiot?
Funny. Yeah, crazy stuff. So speaking of cops, Jeff, coming back to you, here's a situation I was pondering while I was putting together this brief. What happens when the cops get locked into an active shooter scene, and then you've got all of these other, events, attacks, whatever, that are happening elsewhere? And ironically enough, I put my TV over here and it just runs through stuff automatically. And it was on the Hollywood shooting, the shootout. Remember in the 1990s where the 2 guys had full auto AK-47s and the cops had pea shooters basically. And man, they had them pinned down. We've all seen the videos multiple times. But what happens? Like when you're locked into that, Jeff, I mean, I don't foresee those guys getting up and going and responding to something else, especially when they're pinned down.
No, because what's going to happen, especially in a smaller city, they're going to, they'll send everybody and to the first one. And now someone like New York, where they've got literally tens of thousands of police officers, they're not going to send everyone. There's still going to be others to respond. But if you get a smaller town, they are probably going to send everyone, thinking, okay, this is our biggest problem is today. It's right here, right now. We have to respond to it. But then something else happens. We get to peel some of those guys off. They're engaged. That's like sending a troops against a fortified position and say, okay, wait a minute, half you guys step back and come over and go across town and attack something else. Yeah, it's going to be a mess. And, I think the terrorists know this and they're planning on it. So the cops need to, you got to fight the instinct to send everybody all at once and take a breath and keep some troops in reserve. You know, the military always does that. When you have an invasion, you have a big force, you always have troops in reserve because you got to fill a gap. You got to plug a hole.
Well, let me ask you the next question. We've discussed it before, and I don't have any pictures handy like I have in the past because I didn't anticipate it was going to go this direction. But what about this bad habit of law enforcement cars, you know, all piling up when they respond? And everybody I've spoken to says that their agency has an SOP that says don't do that because you're an easy target, but it happens constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, just add that to your calculus.
And it's human nature, I think, for men of action. They want to be in the action. They want to, you know, you go where the problem is. You know, if a house is on fire, you don't go to the house next door with a garden hose to keep it from spreading. You go and fight the fire where the house is on fire. And police officers are going to do the same thing. They're going to say, yeah, someone should stay behind. And it's not going to be me. It's going to be somebody else. Well, if they all think that, nobody's going to stay behind. But it's because cops, like firemen, except for the one in Uvalde, Texas, tend to be men of action. And their first response, their first instinct is to respond actively to the threat.
Yeah, so bear with me here because I'm trying to get a picture of that one incident that we did discuss in the past, and it was in Michigan at the Temple, Israel. There it is. And if you look at almost all of those cars that are in front of that green RV there, these are all cop cars that piled up. And it's such a dangerous situation, right? I mean, the terrorists are counting on this sort of thing where they can just take out all of these law enforcement officers. Again, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Randy, do you have any comments on that? Like, I mean,
I'll just say, let's go back to September 11th and imagine if there was something else afterwards, right? Like, we know that this plan could involve that, where they're going to specifically target the first responders once they show up and then move on. Where at September 11th, it was over. Now, none of us knew that at the time. And of course, we all took safety measures, whether it be personals or governments or local municipalities. I think everybody across the country did. But the reality is, had there been a follow-on attack, let's just imagine what could have happened in New York City. And we already talked about many times, like if they were at 100%, they got somewhere around 50,000 police officers. And that's probably where they were on September 11th. It's not where they are today, as we've mentioned. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, we know that roughly they have 50,000 police officers on staff at any one time because of how large the city is and their population. But just imagine if there had been another attack after that, because people still went there and everybody grouped down there. Just think about the amount of casualties. And it's probably one of the things that helped spawn this idea, besides we already do this, just because it's very devastating. But had there been a follow-on attack, I think that, New York City could have been crippled and damaged in a way that we would probably still not have repaired it to this day.
So let's just dwell on this for a minute, Randy. and you've spoken to this before, but again, we had a lot of new people watching the podcast. Tell the audience from a combat perspective what the absence of command and control does to a civilian population, like call it a collapse event, like when Baghdad fell, for example, and there was nobody to really police stuff. Humans are humans, right? Like, we're all going to react relatively similar when shit collapses. Just describe how chaotic that was again.
Man, to me, the only thing that could describe what happened after Baghdad fell is biblical, because it was like all 7 or 8 million people that lived there came out at once all day long to go collect up stuff. I compared to it. What's that?
That's a huge number.
It is. And I think that's how many live in Baghdad. And I'm not kidding when I said every street was full, every direction that you could see. people were moving. It was like an anthill that had been disturbed, and they were just like an anthill carrying off everything. They left nothing. And that went on for 3 solid days. I mean, at night they would go in, and of course we did have martial law, and there was a curfew that was, I think, 10 o'clock, 9 or 10 o'clock. But either way, nighttime there were still people out, but not like the day. But all day long, that is all you saw for 3 days. And when I say they carried off everything, they carried off everything. And I'll go to the point. I was on sitting at a point on a road, a checkpoint, and watching all this go by with all me and my other private buddies on guard duty. And I see something coming from a distance off, and it's I could tell it's somebody walking on the side of the road, but they have a funny shape, so I can't figure it out. As it gets closer, it turns out to be this old lady, and she had to, she looked like she could have been 80, but over there that could be 60. But either way, she was old. And unlike most of the older ladies there that are robust, she was a skinny woman. However, this woman had a big, huge, fancy porcelain bathtub with the fancy feet.
Okay.
On her back. She was bent over, holding over top of her head, holding that bathtub with the one arm, and then holding it on one side on the back. And I tell you, she had to have covered at least a mile at the time from when I could see her where she was coming to the time she disappeared. She never stopped walking, and this woman walked right past my checkpoint carrying this big, huge bathtub.
That's
and it is. But that's just what was going on. Another thing I saw at that same checkpoint a little bit later was 2 grown men ended up fighting over, which was a brand new, nice generator that we always talk about. Not one of the big industrial ones, but this was one that people use for camping and hunting or, and all that kind of stuff. Not there, but I mean here, I apologize. So I don't know what they were using it for, but these 2 guys got in a fight with it. And unfortunately, neither one of them could fight. They couldn't throw a punch. They could barely slap each other. It was pathetic. To this day, I wish I had a recording of it because it's so funny. But what happened in the end is neither one of them could ward the other one off. So they both took turns destroying this thing before they walked off.
That's
yeah. But just talk about fighting for the Christmas present, right? The toy that everybody's searching. These guys were fighting over a generator, and then since neither one could win, they just destroyed it. But all the while, thousands of people are going by the whole time.
The ironic thing is, Randy, I just saw a video a couple days ago on X of 2 Muslims in their man dresses or whatever the hell you call them. And they were in some sort of altercation trying to kick each other and stuff. And I mean, their kicks wouldn't have knocked over a friggin' feather.
Pretty sad affair, isn't it?
It was pretty comical.
I've seen women kick their butts more than these 2 guys. It was hilarious trying to watch them fight.
That is too much. Jeff, based on your career, how do adversaries typically plan coordinated attacks and account for deliberately exploiting the emergency response saturation? I was going to say situation, but more so saturation.
Well, what they've done traditionally is they do 2 bombs. They set off a bomb. Everybody rushes in afterwards, like in a marketplace. And then when the first responders arrive, they set off a second bigger bomb to kill the first responders. That's been an MO for decades now.
It's kind of, it's so simple, but so effective, right?
And it works.
How do you defend against that, Jeff? Like you said, the default is I want to get in the fight and help, and everybody gets piled up. And we have SOPs that are supposed to avoid that happening. I mean, how do you defend against that stuff?
Well, you have to temper your response. You can't send everybody, and it's really hard to do. A bomb goes off, 30, 40 people are killed, maybe 100 wounded. Your first instinct is to get ambulance in there as quickly as possible. But before the first responders go in, you need security or police to go in and look around and say, okay, usually they're car bombs. And so, okay, what other cars are here that are unaccompanied, that are suspicious, that are riding low, something like that, and you've got to investigate them with minimal personnel. So if they do go off, you're not losing your whole police department. But most people don't think that way because they don't think like terrorists. They think like, I'm going to go help these people.
That's a legit comment, right? I mean, if you don't think in the same terms as the bad guys, it makes it really, really hard to anticipate their moves. Randy, check this out. When I was researching this episode just to see what happens when, you know, all of the first responders get saturated and stuff, I was asking a few different AIs. I'm up to about, I think, 15 subscriptions now.
Oh, goodness.
It's because they each specialize in different things. But I asked a few of them, you know, what's the time from expected time? Like if you mapped it out from the first strike, first attack to, you know, total collapse of, you know, the emergency response teams. And they all came back in the same ballpark, like 20 to 45 minutes. And then I followed that up with, and I said, okay, well, why? Like, why does it happen that fast in a mid-sized city, like say Buffalo, population of whatever? And you know what it came back and said? It said because of social media, that the panic will explode on social media. I mean, just pick that ball up and run with it for a minute. It was so obvious that I thought to myself, well, shit, I didn't need to ask an AI that question if I had just thought about it.
I saw something yesterday I wish I would have kept because it was talking about a program the CIA was coming up with. And then when they decided to nix it, like the very next day, Zuckerberg came out with Facebook. But basically, I think this is what social media was for, right? It was to help people do exactly this and divide us even further and many different factions. And that's exactly what it's done. And as we know now, whether it be Twitter or anywhere else, you know, people are going to it because, one, we all know that the mainstream media is not telling the news. Journalism is dead. It's dead. It's been dead. Apparently, it's not coming back because otherwise, all this stuff that's been uncovered by Nick Shirley or anybody else, they would have uncovered. So the fact is that we, you know, dang, I just lost my train of thought. What was the question?
No, I was just asking for your comments on social media. Basically.
That's right. So I think that they developed social media and they allowed it on the public so that we could do this. And now when you look at anything happens, everybody turns to social media and starts pointing. I mean, somebody could be on fire in the middle of a crowd, and instead of people helping them, they're turning on their phones and filming it and doing Facebook Live and everything else. It makes no sense. But it is a way that people can get their message out very quickly, and you don't have to wait for the news. The problem is the bad guys know this too.
Yeah.
And, you know, they use it as a tool. So, you know, whether it be, you know, when Jesus died and rolled away the stone when he was risen, and they convinced the guards to tell a lie, you know, that lie is what many people believe and still to this day because it got out first. And, you know, no amount of truth after that would overcome it. And I think that, you know, social media helps exasperate that. And it certainly helps spreading all kinds of misinformation and lies. So it's hard to really discern what the truth is.
Well, I mean, that's an MO that all kinds of people use, bad people. And some of those bad people are government, right?
Yeah.
I just saw, I think it was last week, I saw a couple people arguing online. And one of them was saying, well, Donald Trump wasn't shot in Butler, PA. That was just the debris that came off the teleprompter and stuff, which is a crock of shit. And where that stemmed from was Christopher Wray on a Wednesday goes in front of Congress and says, well, you know, Donald Trump wasn't really shot in Butler, PA. And then 48 hours later, the FBI released this very, you know, small retraction. Oh, by the way, Christopher Wray spoke out of turn on Friday or on Wednesday, pardon me. And Donald Trump was in fact shot with a 223-556. But what you just nailed it. Once something gets out there, the first thing people hear, they latch onto it and they roll with it, especially if they have confirmation bias, right?
And somehow the lie is always faster. It just seems to be the way it goes.
Freak, that's really, really well said. The lie is always faster. I got to remember that. Uh, Jeff, so moving from the theoretical into, the real world. So after I was looking at what the projection was for how fast emergency services would saturate, I said, okay, well, in real life. So let's talk 9/11, like Randy brought it up first, the Mumbai attacks in 2008, and basically said, how fast did it take for first responders to be overwhelmed? And again, I asked several AIs, and they all came with the same range, Jeff, 30 to 60 minutes. I mean, for a city, like what's Mumbai again? 18 million people or something like that?
It's big. Yeah, it's well over 10 million.
So you've got Mumbai and New York, massive cities, 30 to 60 minutes. And I mean, those weren't even, I mean,
surprised it wasn't faster, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, because everybody's going to call. A switching system, you look at a cell tower. A cell tower they have generally three antennas that point in three different areas, 120 degrees apart. And the equipment in the cell tower is designed to handle a certain number of calls. In denser areas, they'll do more, but in rural areas, fewer. Once you hit that saturation point, no new calls can come in. Now that can help 911 because if you're not talking to the tower, you're certainly not talking to the 911 operator. But yeah, they're for a limited volume. It's like a road. Think of a road in your town. Look at the main street. If everybody in the city decided to get on Main Street at the same time, what would you have? Gridlock. I don't care how big the street is, because they're not designed for 100% saturation ever. They look at what's a realistic number, what's the maximum volume of calls I can expect on a normal day. And when you have a big football game and things like that, where you're going to have all these people in one area, what do? They bring in temporary cell towers to basically service those people. Well, when there's a terrorist attack, they're not going to do that. They're not going to be prepared to do that. Football games, they have weeks to prepare. They may have a mobile cell tower, but it's going to be sitting in a warehouse somewhere. The system's going to get overwhelmed quick because it's not designed for everybody to call it all at once.
Yeah, there's a good example of it that happens south of us in Daytona Beach when there's a major event like, the Daytona 500. So they do exactly what you just described, but the surrounding area only has X amount of bandwidth.
Yep.
So when they deploy these temporary towers, because you've got hundreds of thousands of people around the speedway, it doesn't create more bandwidth overall. It just concentrates the bandwidth where the crowds are. We used to live in a gated community not too far south of the track, and every single time there were races on, Jeff, we had no signal. We would have one bar, but we couldn't complete any calls at all because he took all of our bandwidth and shunted it over to the track.
Well, the thing about cell tower and the way the cell system is set up, it's really ingenious because you've got these three quadrants, and they go in different directions, but you've got a frequency going this way, another frequency going that one, another one going the other way. But if you look at the frequency going directly away from you, well, the next closest tower along that azimuth is a different frequency. And then the next tower after that is yet another frequency. So by the time you get to repeating the first frequency, there's enough distance that the tower A is not being interfered with by tower, tower D. And it's when I took a course on this when I was at the CIA, and this is how it worked. I'm like, this is actually really, really smart. So you can add towers and increase your density. And because of the way the system is set, your phone will detect the closest tower, and then it dials back its power level to where it has just enough to reach that tower, so your battery doesn't go dead. Now, if you have a tower that's way far away, it turns up the power so that it can reach that tower. So all these things are designed for other reasons, but they do affect it, that you can get an incredible amount of density in a cell system if you're bringing in new towers, if you're bringing in the portable towers, because you can increase that density damn near exponentially. But you got to have the hardware. And if you don't have the hardware, it won't work.
Yeah. So interesting, side note to what you just said is that, our smartphones are not very smart. So they do exactly what you just described. They find a tower, a signal, they latch onto it, then they dial back and they don't look for any more towers. So we've had a rash of break-ins in Florida over the past few years from sophisticated criminals where they come into a neighborhood and they will put it, like they'll hide in the shrubbery and stuff, a bridge. So in other words, a cell phone to internet bridge where there's no
spoofer.
Yeah. And basically, if you take a bridge that's supposed to go from your cell phone to the internet, because they're going to push you over VoIP, the phones are so stupid that they see that as the strongest signal, they latch onto it. But if it's not connected to an internet source, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. Normally, your phone picks up at least 2 towers. It gets the closest tower, and then it picks up a secondary tower in case the first one's full. If it's busy, then it'll automatically go over to the next one. And this is why when you're driving down the road, you don't lose your phone call if you're talking to someone on a cell phone, because even if you get out of range of the first tower, that signal gets too weak and it automatically rolls over to the next strongest signal. And they're smart. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. That's not dumb. It's not that your cell phone is dumb. It's that the bad guys are smarter. They put in a cell tower spoofer. Your phone goes, okay, there's the strongest cell tower. And the cell tower is going, yep, I'm here. So it thinks it's got a good connection. Well, it just can't go beyond it.
Yeah.
Now, if you turn that spoofer off, it'll instantly go look for another tower. But the spoofer saying, right here, I got you, dude. I got you. And so your phone doesn't look any further.
So the spoofers are highly illegal here in America.
Yeah.
So you've got like these
also easy to do.
Yeah, you got these transnational gangs that bring them in. Like in California, there was a rash of all these gangs from El Salvador that were doing this and stealing from wealthy Americans in California and then taking all the shit with them back to El Salvador and selling it on the black market there. And they were using the spoofers, but you don't even need a spoofer. We do not have a strong signal here. We had a hurricane wipe out the tower closest to our home. I want to say that was like 2020. And they said they were going to replace it. They never replaced it. So our cell signal sucks. So they sent us a bridge. So our phone connects to it, and then the phone connects to our fiber internet and takes us out that way. If you pull the Ethernet cable out of that bridge, it's got nowhere to bridge you to, right? You're just DOA. You're dead right there. So before we move into segment number 2, quick announcement here for y'all. Survival Dispatch Remnant is launching a week from Saturday. So this is an audio podcast. And if you go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, you'll see this article. Now I'll show you on the homepage, you'll see this. Then you've got this article that describes what Survival Dispatch Remnant is. So it's a fictional series that follows the Smith family. So Mark Smith, Sarah, Jake, Emily, and Casey, their dog, which is actually based on one of my dogs, one of my pit bulls. And it's going to be an audio podcast, 7 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, except the people who sign up as paid subscribers. It'll be 12 noon, and there will also be a guide that goes with each episode as well. This is a kind of a unique twist that we put on this. This has been in the works for over 6 months now, in that it's going to show this family's trials and tribulations in a post-apocalyptic world, but it's going to have real-world survival lessons baked into it. And you're going to encounter people that are part of the Survival Dispatch universe that exist in real life. So if you go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, you can sign up for free, or if you sign up before we launch a week from Saturday, it's 20% off right now. It's $5.60 a month, or $56 a year to get your full access to everything. This is pretty cool. I'm going to tell you, I've written 104 episodes so far. So it'll be an audio podcast, 7 p.m. Saturday, Sunday, narrated by me. And there will be an article, like I said, that accompanies it that the paying subscribers get. SurvivalDispatchRemnant.com. If you click the subscribe button, it automatically applies to 20%. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need a special link. And like I said, $56 a year, $560 a month, and you get full access. It's I'm pretty excited about, to be honest with you. It's kind of cool. Did you want to say something, Randy?
Yeah, I wanted to, not about the remnant. That is very cool. But before we moved on from this, the one question, because Father Duck was saying on 9/11, he was at ground zero. And basically he said where the 9/11 went down instantly, like right away. So that's how fast it was. And then he also said no cell phones worked or pagers. The only thing that did work was prepaid Virgin mobile flip phones. He said, the funny thing was, he said that morning there were no cab drivers, or a lot of the shops were closed. So it seems like, and there's a lot of Muslims down there, is what he's saying. So apparently somebody already had the word, because those folks weren't at work that morning either. So
that's good to know. So anyway, final plug, SurvivalDispatchRemnant.com. I'm putting the link in the live chats. I'll get to Substack in just a second. I've got it in all the other.
So what'd you say? You already got 104?
I've written the first 104 episodes, and so that's basically 52 weeks.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a post-apocalyptic scenario. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. You got to listen to the first episode a week from Saturday, and the first two episodes cover this very apocalyptic event that happens, and then the balance of it follows the Smith family, and there will be all kinds of other families and mutual assistance groups. It's kind of like a more realistic version of The Walking Dead, to be honest with you. There won't be zombies, but there is going to be some special, unique stuff.
Oh man, I see a movie in the deal somewhere down the road.
Can you imagine? All right.
Nice that you said that. Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good, Randy. Okay, well, let's get into the segment number 2 next, which is the coverage gap. What happens when your neighborhood, or what happens to your neighborhood, I should say, when the system saturates? When units are fully committed to active scenes and mutual aid is still in queue, large sections of any city, enter what effectively amounts to a coverage blackout. Fires burn without response, medical emergencies go unattended, and the only security present is whatever individuals have prepared for themselves. Again, you are your own first responder. The coverage gap is not evenly distributed. Suburban and rural areas lose coverage fastest because they depend on fewer units spread across larger geographic zones, meaning a coordinated attack does not need to directly target your neighborhood to leave it completely unprotected. This is the behavioral reality every guardian needs to internalize. In a mass terror event, the system is managing the highest priority scenes it can reach. And unfortunately, your neighborhood is not on the list. So, Jeff, how do dispatch centers prioritize coverage zones during a multi-site event? And what criteria actually determines which neighborhoods get abandoned first? I mean, there must be some method to their madness, right?
Politicians' houses get covered first. The dispatchers' houses get covered second.
Shocking.
I would like to think they prioritize it based on population, things like that. I mean, if you've got a neighborhood where there are 4,000 people, I would like to think it gets higher priority than a neighborhood that has 4 people. But I honestly don't know, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't know, if they even have that in their protocols.
It could be. Randy, do you want to speculate on that at all?
So I will say that it seems to be that if you're a neighborhood of affluency, you get more attention and you get faster response times than if, let's say, well, I will include the hood because we know what's going on down there, right? The cops don't even go there no more.
Right.
So it's the middle neighborhoods that we live in that are now at the bottom. And you can bet politicians, as he said, I can guarantee you every mayor and any of those types of folks are make sure that if anything happens in their neighborhood, that their police presence is right away. And so, but again, I'll go back to my original statement. It seems to be a fact that if you're more of an affluent neighborhood, the more affluent it is, the faster and the better and the more the response is.
Well, work with me on this one, Randy. So let's just say that you have this gap, right? You've got this period where there's nobody to respond to your neighborhood. A suburban neighborhood, just for example's sake. And let's say that window is 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, whatever in there. What's the byproduct of that? Like you'd witnessed Baghdad being looted. Clearly, somehow the word spread amongst people that it's a free for all. Go do whatever the hell you want. And
man,
wouldn't that draw people in? Like if they knew that an area is not covered, I think it would draw more bad guys out of the woodwork.
It's funny that you said that. I've never thought of it that way. Like who put out the word? How did they know? And I don't really know, to tell you the truth, unless it was by radio. I do know that we have now a bunch of those hand crank radios.
Okay.
And again, I'll preface that by saying when they handed them out to us, I did ask. I said, well, how good did these work? Well, we're handing them out to Iraqis, and, we're going to make sure that these radios will only pick up the stations that we want them to get and the messages that we want them to get. So that's part of a psyop. But that is reality, and that probably will happen afterwards as well. But I don't know, because I would say that the very first day it started at daylight. So I'm not sure how the message got out. It's a very good question. I wonder how that is. But as we always say, whether it's a lie or something like this, boy, word spreads like wildfire, like faster than an open field. And that is very fast, because for those that don't know, if you're in a big enough field and it catches on fire and it's dry, you cannot run fast enough to outrun it and get out. So that's pretty fast. And the word seemed to spread faster, because I'm not kidding. From day one, from the very start, everybody was out. Everybody.
Well, that's actually where I was going with Jeff in this next. I mean, you set it up perfectly. Jeff, how quickly do you reckon civil order will deteriorate in American cities? I mean, great example Randy gave in Baghdad, but imagine it's an American city when there's no like visible law enforcement during a major crisis. Like how quickly does it go into panic looting in your estimation in America? And quickly before you answer that, Manly Thomas is out of control as usual. He's posted that he's read the intro to Remnant. It's going to be epic. Like to sponsor 10 memberships, getting people signed up. You choose. I pay. He's another guardian angel, basically. I'll match Manly. So the first 20 people who email support@survivaldispatch.com, put in the subject line one word, Remnant. That's it. Just put Remnant in. When the podcast wraps up between Manly and I, we'll get 20 of you looked after with the free paid memberships to Remnant. So sorry, Jeff. I just wanted to throw it out. There's people had a chance to digest it. Take it away.
I think the speed of collapse is going to depend on the city. I think in cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, it's going to be fairly quick, because the people, one, they have a high concentration of trolls, for lack of a better word. When you have a large population of third, this is going to sound racist, but I don't mean it that way, of third world people who have grown up functioning or surviving, I should say, in dysfunctional societies like Somalia and places like that, it's going to be second nature for them to say, okay, now we go take care of it. That's why I think you're seeing a lot of this fraud. Their whole thing, it reminds me of the old, the Russian guy from the first Jack Reacher movie. We take what can be taken. And I think that's their attitude. They will take what can be taken. We saw it in New York when there were when there were blackouts. We saw it in Minnesota when George Floyd, died. We saw it in Los Angeles when Rodney King happened.
Point.
These people in those kind of cities with those kind of populations, it's just an opportunity for them to take advantage of. Now, I think if you're in a small town USA or a mid-sized city, it's not going to be as bad. There might be some of that. But also in small town cities and stuff like that, shall we say the cops tend to shoot first and ask questions later? Back in the old days when they said looters will be shot and they meant it, you didn't get a lot of looting. Now we don't. Looters will be rewarded, and if you shoot them, the cop will be punished. And we need to get back to we need to get back to looters will be shot.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that one bit at all. Randy, let's try to get into some of the things that people can do in light of all this stuff. What's the first thing, in your opinion, that a prepared household should do the minute that they realize, holy crap, this shit's going down, nobody's coming to help, and we're all on our own? What do they do? What's the average household do when they realize this, Randy?
Well, I think it'll be different for different folks. If you're in a city that comes under attack like one of these things, it's going to be much different than if you're somebody else in a different state, in a different city. But we all should take note. And I would say if you're somebody that's fairly close and that this may affect you, one, you want to, get all your family members together in one place. Or whether you're staying in, you're leaving, whatever, you need to get your family together, and hopefully you already have a plan of what you're going to do at that point, whether it be bugging in or bugging out. And so, those would be the first things you want to discuss. Like what would be the plan if something happens? And certainly if something happens in our city or our neighborhood and it's going to affect us, what are we going to do? That would be your very first step. And then, then accordingly, if you're going to bug out, well, then obviously you need to have a plan of, hopefully you've already got some stuff packed, but if not, you got to get all your stuff ready, loaded up, and out of there very, very quickly. You can't wait a day or two to do this. It's going to have to be within the first 12 hours, I would say, and that might even be pushing it a little far. But if you're going to bug in, you're going to want to have things to defend your home. You're definitely going to want to have weapons. You're going to have a plan of how to do that, how to harden your home, and, whether that be the windows, because that's obviously going to be a vulnerability to everybody's house, or the glass windows. And so, but if you're bugging in, you're also going to want to have a plan on water and food and other supplies, certainly medical supplies and probably some medications. I mean, it's all common sense stuff. But it doesn't mean everybody's prepared for that right now, because we really haven't had to deal with this. And as I've said on a show recently, we've been the land of plenty. People can go down to the grocery store or down to the 7-Eleven or the McDonald's or any other restaurant at any time of the day and almost of night and not have to worry about it. But this will be a different situation. So you will have to rely on yourself. And then, you got to sit there and think of, what does that look like? And again, what are you going to do? Are you going to bug in? You're bugging out, and then come up with those safety measures, because, common sense always applies. So please use common sense when you're thinking out what your plans will be. And then I'll go with something that Don says, because it's something I learned in the infantry on probably day one in basic training, is the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And that's not meant to hurt anybody's feelings. That's the actual acronym they teach you. Keep it simple, stupid. And they use the word stupid because if a stupid person can follow it, then it's probably sound. And what you call that in the military, or at least in the Army, was called private proof. If something was private proof, that's what it meant.
That's too funny. You raised a good point, Randy, when you mentioned, they come into your neighborhood, and what do you do as far as securing your windows is concerned? That's a big deal, right? Because overseas, when these jihadis go on tears, It's common for them to throw Molotov cocktails through windows, and they also like to smash windows out and throw burning tires in. So even if your house doesn't completely burn down, the smoke forces you out of there. And that happened on 10/7. So I'll just share this quickly. I do not recommend that you apply this stuff on your own, but if you go on Amazon or wherever and you look up hurricane window film, you can get it with or without tint. It goes on the inside of your windows, and that's what it looks like right there. So the glass may get broken because somebody threw a Molotov cocktail, or maybe they hit it with a rock, but the fragments will all stay in place because the film behind it basically has it all glued in place. Now, if they want to get in, clearly they're going to get in. Doesn't matter what you do to your home. If a determined group of people want to get in your house, they're going to get in. It's all about making your home a harder target than somebody else in your neighborhood, as well as buying time, because time means distance. Distance means safety. But
I would add one thing. Now, not he's going to be able to do this because I've been trying to figure it out myself in my own house. You also have to have an escape out.
Yes.
Because if someone comes in there and they can't get to you because you have hardened your house, sooner or later, they're going to set it on fire, and probably sooner than later. So you always also have a backup. How am I going to get out of here? Me and my family are going to get out of here if in a split second we really need to.
Super valid point. So last comment on the film for y'all out there. I would have somebody come in and install it for you, like the guys who put graphics on vehicles, the guys who tint window vehicles, all that kind of stuff. Because if you're like me, like I'm a complete retard when it comes to stuff like that. I can't even wrap Christmas presents without making it turn into a total abortion. So,
well, tinting's not that hard, but it's also easy to mess up. It's not hard to mess up at all. So hire yourself a professional to come out and put that tint on.
Yeah, 100%. So, Jeff, kind of a multi-pronged question here for you. How do adversarial planners account for the gaps in coverage? So they're essentially using it as a force multiplier. Like they know, okay, that neighborhood over there is going to get zero attention. And we know it's going to get zero attention because they've ran these fake bomb threats or active shooter stuff. So they've seen the cops' SOPs. They know where law enforcement's going, how long it took them to get there. They know where they've taken their eye off the ball. So you've got the planners, like the guys who are actually doing the attack. But let me add another element to it. What about the opportunistic bad guys out there that go, oh shit, this is a great opportunity to wreak havoc on that neighborhood because now there's going to be no response for hours.
Yeah, those are called looters. They could be Muslims doing it too, but you'll see that with just criminals. All the cops are downtown. I'm gonna go rob the rich people in the suburbs, or in New York. Everybody's at World Trade Center. I'm gonna go up to the Upper East Side where where rich people live. And from a terrorist standpoint, even if you don't do the opportunistic ones, you send your best and your brightest cell, the most capable cell, to do the first attack and draw in all the police force. They're the most capable, they're most able to defend themselves, the most able to take out as many cops and first responders as possible. But then it leaves your B team and even your C team, they got free reign. I mean, all they got to be able to do is pull a trigger. Because you got to realize with terrorists, they're just trying to cause chaos and kill people. So if you've got, you got Omar is not a very good shot and he's just kind of there. Well, you send him off to some soft target and there's not going to be any cops showing up. He has a higher chance of success than if you put him in the first attack and the cops come and they kill him in 2 seconds. So if I were a terrorist, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be setting it up that way. I would get my best fighters, my shock troops, as it were, to engage with the police and keep the police occupied so that all my other guys could just, they can go do what they need to do willy-nilly and not have to worry about, the first team of the first responders being there.
Man, that's when you think about it, it's downright just evil. I can't think of a better word to describe it. Randy, in your estimation, what neighborhoods or community types do you think would be most likely to organize? I don't know, call it like a, not community watch, but like community defense or something like that. And is there like any particular demographic or geography or community you think that would be more inclined to be prepared for this sort of stuff versus not? And if so, why is that?
Absolutely. I would say in all those, your rural communities are more prepared than anybody in the cities or in the urban area. Because again, the people in the urban area are like what I just mentioned. They've been living in the land of plenty. They don't stock up on everything else. They're just like all the grocery stores and department stores today, just in time. And so they don't have all these plans. But people out in the rural, like I'll just take my parents, for example. Where they live, it's 40 miles to the closest Walmart. 40 miles to the closest Walmart. So when you live in an area like that, you're already used to having to plan ahead, right? And to have stuff on hand and to have everything you need. And those are the people that are doing that out in the rural area, in the countryside. All those folks are, because they've already been doing it. And they just have to add a little bit, if even that, because I know my dad's got plenty of stuff. And so, and has for years. So, they're used to doing that, where in the city, as I just mentioned, everybody's used to just in time and buying it when they need it. They don't need to have a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I can't really give out the address. Sorry, Arthur, and I'm not even going to put what city or state he lives in. But, the fact is, he's not the only one. There's a lot of people who live out there too. And all those people, and certainly all of the farms are left, and we know that's a dying breed. There's still a lot of ranches in this country, but there's still a lot of rural area. And as we noticed on those maps, after all the votes, the whole country's red except all those cities, right?
Yeah.
And it's the big cities that are blue. That is where you're going to see disaster. None of them are ready. And then if we look at the amount of people in SSRIs and everything else today, people have lost their mind up in those cities, and it isn't getting any better. And I would say that, once you see full panic mode, we'll see some real violence in there, because people are going to want to take whatever they can, and they're going to do it however they can. And because again, the thing in Baghdad, that's not an Iraqi thing. That's a human nature thing. So as soon as there's no rule of law, New York City, LA, as you mentioned, Chicago, or as Jeff mentioned, Chicago, Philadelphia, all those things are going to have that problem. And there's not going to be any stopping it, because it's already half cooked up. And, and no one's prepared. And if you think they're stocking up there, I would imagine there are some people like we have on the show here. Mm-hmm. But by far and large, most of the population there is not going to be ready. And that's where we're going to see a lot of death, whether it be by starvation, being killed for some reason, or just the amount of looting and the confusion and violence that happens shortly thereafter. The difference between those and Baghdad is the reason Baghdad was still more friendly. Those two guys didn't kill each other. They ended up destroying the deal. That was one of the only fights I saw. No one was being violent, right? Because they didn't have to be. But there was also a standing army. We were sitting there in Bradleys and tanks and Humvees with rifles and machine guns. So I would imagine that presence made a difference, and that presence won't be there in the cities that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That
the violence will kick up a lot quicker.
Yeah, you guys definitely had an influence. And as you were talking about it and talking about, cities and whatnot, all I kept thinking to myself is target-rich environment with massive density.
Oh, man. And I mean, big time.
Yeah.
That is the jihadist or a terrorist wet dream right there.
Yeah, it's got to be for sure. So, Jeff, what do you reckon the single biggest mistake that unprepared Americans will make in the first hour of, call it a coverage collapse, like where all the first responders are saturated? And what's the biggest mistake, and how does it get them killed?
I think the biggest mistake is curiosity is going to overcome them, and they're going to, hey, let's go down and see what's happening. and then they're going to get shot.
Can you imagine? Like,
I mean, how many people? Come on. I mean, how many people? You don't think when the World Trade Center came down that there weren't people who lived in Greenwich Village and places like that who could walk 6 or 8, 10 blocks to go down to the World Trade Center to see what was going on? Yeah, they did. There were thousands of people. That's why when you saw them collapse and all that cloud of pulverized concrete and everything else blowing down the canyons of the city, there were people all over the place because they were all out there being looky-loos. The smart ones were the ones that I'm getting the hell out of here. But people will do the same thing. And, I can't really fault them because, if I heard an explosion down the street and I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? I'd probably go look.
right.
But if it's in your town, there's something going on downtown. A lot of these morons will jump in their cars and drive downtown to see what's going on. Not that they can help, not that they can do anything, but other than get in the way and become that 80% target that we always talk about. 20% fighters, 80% targets.
Oh, come on, Jeff. You know what they're going. They're going down there to get out that phone and film it. That's what they're going.
Well, that too. Yeah, that is true. They go, hey, this will look cool on my Instagram. Yeah, no. So you're deaf. Live stream your own death.
I can't disagree. It's absolutely true. I mean, anything to get a viral video, right?
I've used the example of the plane that crashed on campus in 1978. And it was an A7. It was carrying 2 500-pound bombs, and it crashed just off the U of A campus here in Tucson. And everybody ran towards the crash. All the military brats ran away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
something about jet fuel and fire that spreads out.
Bombs. 500-pound heights of bombs, which fortunately did not cook off.
Yeah, just crazy. So before we jump into segment 3, just another quick reminder, Survival Dispatch Remnant is launching a week from Saturday. If you sign up as a member before then, you get 20% off. It's only $5.60 a month or $56 a year. People who sign up will get early access, plus they will get the full written guide that goes with each episode. This is a post-apocalyptic scenario series, audio podcast, kind of like The Walking Dead, but much more realistic with real survival skills, real survival products. I'll let one cat out of the bag. Y'all are going to periodically see cameo appearances from people like Mike Glover, who just so happened to show up and, help the Smith family or one of the other families. It's epic. I've written 104 episodes of it. And so I've written the first entire year. I've been working on it for 6 months. It's going to be.
So there's probably going to be some Mike Glovers that also show up on the other end of the spectrum, right? Not to help.
Oh,
Coming to take stuff, right? No,
yes, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, it
has to be.
the handful of people who've seen the details are, just shaking their head. It's
awesome.
It's a fusion of entertainment in a post-apocalyptic world with very realistic factors, realistic people, survival skills, all kinds of stuff woven into it. I have not been this excited about a new Survival Dispatch product in a very long time, and it's been a labor of love. Like I said, I came up with the idea almost a year ago. I started working on it 6 months ago and I'm very heavily vested in it. But anyway, moving on to segment number 3, the Guardian Protocol, building your own response capacity before the day comes. The answer to an emergency response collapse is not panic, obviously, and it's not politics either. It's building the skills, supplies, and communication infrastructure at the household and neighborhood levels that make you functionally independent from a system that will not be available on the day that you need it the most. Medical capability is probably the single most critical gap for most American households. It's not sexy like guns and guns, right? So people tend to ignore it way too much. So, and I'm going to have Randy speak to that when we get into this third and final segment here. But at the end of the day, medical capability is a big gap. So if you can take a Stop the Bleed course, learn how to use tourniquets, learn how to use a chest seal, that's literally the difference between life and death in many types of, attack scenarios. Somebody's been shot, stabbed grievously, blowing up like poor Randy was. If you don't have these skills and you don't have the stuff to use, like chest seals and tourniquets, good ones, by the way. I think most people, by the way, are going to tell you straight up, professionals are going to tell you straight up, North American cat tourniquets are the way to go. They are proven. They work. There's a lot of other janky tourniquets out there. I've actually come across a couple of them that are reasonably decent, but I think the gold standard is still, North American cat tourniquets. So communication and community are also force multipliers. So we've spoken at length about radios, ham radios, GMRS radios, some sort of pre-planned neighborhood alert system, relationships with your neighbors. I know it sounds crazy, right? Relationship with your neighbor. What? Yeah. That's the way it used to be. All of us, who are Gen Xers and older, we remember what that was like. But at the end of the day, you got to do that before SHTF, not during or after, to get the optimum response, especially if you're going to hold things down for a minimum of 72 hours, whether it be at your community level or your home. So with that being said, obviously Randy was a paramedic, and I'm going to have him weigh in heavily on this, but Jeff, I'm going to come to you first as far as what's the minimum viable trauma kit for a household who wants to prepared for this kind of stuff, and what dollar value would you say the average investment is?
That's probably something Randy can answer better than me, because I wasn't an EMT. But
hold on just a second. There's a reason. Not only did I come to you because I always come to you first. Randy being an EMT, I know that we're going to get like the professional, paramedic view.
Well, good.
I want to hear from another person like myself who's not a professional in this stuff, what your opinion is, because obviously Randy's opinion trumps yours and mine, but I want to hear another person who's not a professional weigh in.
Well, I would think you definitely need a large assortment of different sizes of bandages. Some Band-Aids, the larger ones, the smaller ones, all that. You need topical antibiotics for wounds. You need the betadine, something like that, that you can use to sterilize or at least clean the outside of a wound. You need you need the the hemocrits and all that, the stuff that will stop the bleeding. You need tourniquets, and you need you just need a lot of clean cloth. Because if you get, if you had just plain white sheets that had been washed and bleached and put away, or maybe sealed in a plastic bag so they're not getting infected, you can rip those up and you can make slings, you can make bandages, you can make compresses, things like that. Because no matter how much real bandage stuff you buy, you're probably going to run out, and it's not going to last forever. And then you need antibiotics. I mean, you need topical antibiotics to put on a wound, but you need internal antibiotics, because if someone gets shot and it drives the shirt, a chunk of the shirt, into the shoulder or into the leg or the arm, that carries bacteria, and that's going to get infection. So unless you're fishing that out of there, which the person who you're working on probably will not appreciate at the time, you need to be able to give them some sort of antibiotics to keep the infection down until you at least get them to a real doctor and real trauma center. So, I wouldn't, I don't think you need to spend $1,000 on stuff, but you need to buy a good first aid kit with tourniquets and things like that, and then supplement it with, the liquid betadines, the hydrogen peroxide, the alcohols, things like that, and then go with, topical antibiotics, ingestible antibiotics, and if you can get some good analgesics, because if you're hurt, if someone's wounded, you're probably hurting, and you want to keep them calm and keep them immobile. But if they're in pain, writhing around, that's not going to help either.
So a couple quick comments before I turn this over to Randy. Number one of my best friends was a paramedic in Cleveland, Tennessee for many, many years. And he said to me, it doesn't matter what off the shelf kit that you buy, you will not have enough gauze and clean stuff to, stop the bleeding and clean stuff up, clean wounds up. He said, you'll go through it so fast that you'll be out in a New York minute. So his advice was stock up on gauze and big bandages and all that stuff, like 10 times what you think is necessary. Number one. And then there was another thing that he said. Now my sometimes is kicking in because I was stupid and I didn't write it down.
A cheap solution to that for a lot of people are you can buy bar mops. These are white cotton towels, and they call them bar mops because you see them in bars. That's what they clean but you don't use them for that. They come sealed up in plastic bags. They're usually bleached and everything else. They're a great all-purpose bandage material because they're really absorbent, and you can tie them together. You can do all sorts of stuff with them, but they're cheap. You can spend $10 and get a freaking dozen or a couple of dozen of them, and then put them in with your first aid kit. Don't use them to wipe the counters, but keep them sterile, keep them clean, and put them in your first aid kit.
Yeah, good advice. I remember what the other thing is because you mentioned antibiotics. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, if we're broadcasting live like we are right now, you'll see the live stream at the top of the page. Like you see it here. When we're not doing a live broadcast, it's not there. But if you go to survivaldispatch.news and you scroll down on the right here, you'll see where it says sponsors right there. And inside of there, you're going to see Ozio right here. Fourth one up from the bottom. So this is Jace Medical Products at basically a wholesale price. You can think of Ozio Medical. They're like, I'll show you. I'll pull it up here. They're kind of like the Sam's Club to the Walmart sort of thing. And again, it's super high quality stuff from Jace Medical. All your antibiotics plus other stuff you can get there. And would you look at that? It opened a new window and I'm supposed to open. There you go. There's what it looks like. Apologies. Ozio.com though is where it's at. But if you can get 10% off, if you just go to survivaldispatch.news, click on that one right there, Ozio Medical. Super high quality stuff for a really good price. So Randy, coming back to you, same question that Jeff fielded, but just run with this. Minimum viable trauma kit for a household preparing for some sort of mass casualty event, and how much ballpark should they anticipate spending? You're on mute, Randy.
Am I there now?
You're good.
Huh. The mute on the mic worked for the first time ever. I can't believe it. Well, that's why I didn't even know it was on.
Jeff did it.
That's right. First, I want to show people, here is the tourniquet. You need something that has something like this, where you can twist once you get it on properly, and then you can twist and twist. This is what's going to tighten it up to where you see the bleeding stop. And that is what a tourniquet is for, to help stop the bleeding, certainly on major wounds where a regular bandage is not going to stop the bleeding. And so if you don't have any of these, I think I have 6 in the house right now.
Right on.
All of them brand new. But if you don't, I mean, you can use a tie, you can use a belt. Belts are fairly easy to do because it's easier to pull and get tight. But ties, you could cut a long sleeve off. There's lots of things you could use to make a tourniquet. And then you just get a stick, a pencil or a pen, something strong enough to where you still put it in there where you can tighten that up. Because until you do that, you will not see the bleeding stop completely. It's a fact. And so that's why he's talking about these type of tourniquets, because they come with the device already on it for you to twist. Makes it a lot easier. And they're Velcro today, so they're very easy. I'm going to go with Jeff. You know, it's probably, I mean, seriously, I don't know that most people, I don't think that I have $1,000 worth of medical equipment, but if you were to be prepared, I would say certainly in today's prices, that's a bare minimum, right? Probably so, because he's right. If you actually get a bleeding wound, and one that's significant, the amount of blood that comes out in a very quick amount of time is something you're probably not prepared for. And so, you're going to need a lot of those. I like him talking about the bar mops, or the white cotton towels that the bars use, because again, you're going to need to soak up a lot of blood. And think about if you had 3 or 4 casualties. So you're going to need some supplies. And you got to think about how many people are in your family and then in your little group, because that's why I've got 6 of these in the house. I pray I never have to use one. But what happens if you used one already and you need another one, or vice versa? And as you always said, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, that type of deal. But let's get down to the whole package, man. You got to look at it as Chris talked about. You do need some antibiotics, and Jeff both, to cover the spectrum of different types of things, because different antibiotics work on different things. So you would need to, you would definitely want to have. Now, nobody says you have to have a pharmacy. It'd be nice if you did, but if you don't, you still need to have, 20 or 30 of each one of those, I would say, and whatever antibiotics you can get your hands on for different reasons, whether it be for staph infections or Chris already mentioned it, so we'll not cover the different ones. But, then you got to think about going from cuts and bleeding. You have burns. You would need something for burns, because somebody could get burned. And one of the worst things not to be able to treat is a burn. And certainly if somebody gets burned to the level I am, they're going to be in big trouble real fast. So you'll want some burn stuff in there. Heck, I should have pulled one of mine out, but basically cover everything that could possibly happen. I would say, whether, let me go, what else type of bandages got in there. But as Chris mentioned, or Jeff, one of the two, you also want different sizes of bandages. You're going to want from big bandages and a bunch of those towels to all the way down to Band-Aids and all in between. If you can get any kind of clot, there's several products out today for clotting. Those are also advisable, because again, if somebody gets shot, you might want to that helps you close off that bleeding a lot quicker than if you didn't have that. And Jeff is right. Whether you get stabbed or shot, one of the most dangerous things besides what happened to you is your clothing. And like the Civil War, for instance, a lot of people died from infection because, of course, they're not able to wash their clothes every day, and no telling how long they had been wearing them when they got shot or whatever happened to them. And that clothing was very dirty. And once it gets inside your body, and I'll go back to Billy Waugh, who I talked about several times on this show. Billy Waugh was a Green Beret that had 7 Purple Hearts from Vietnam.
Wow.
He just died, I think, a year or 2 ago. But 7 Purple Hearts, one of the times he was shot up and left for dead. And in that instance, when he got back to Walter Reed, they brought him to Walter Reed, and all his other wounds healed up, but he had this serious infection, and it got to the point they were going to cut it off. And I think he begged, and I can't remember the complete details, but he may have got a specific doctor. But they went in one more time to look, and lo and behold, there was a tiny piece of the bottom sole of his boot, his jungle boots, that the bullet carried into his foot. And that little piece of rubber was lodged into a bone in his foot. And that what was causing all the infection. Now, you may not be able to solve that sort of problem, but my point to it is it's why you're going to want the antibiotics and other kind of antiseptics and stuff to be able to treat that kind of thing. So beyond that, man, you need all your little ointments, where it be a triple bionic ointment, all the way down to there's several other kinds. I would have some Vaseline, or what's the other name now they have? I can't remember, but that's what I got from the hospitals, like from Brooke Army Medical Center, and I get it from the VA. Aquaphor, that's what it's called.
Oh, Aquaphor's great.
Aquaphor.
Also, if you have potted plants, get aloe vera plants.
Yes, absolutely.
It's free. It's real cheap. They keep growing, and they work wonders.
As far as Aquaphor is concerned, I've always kept my tattoos above the wrist, but I'm got ink from here to here, around the back, you name it. And when I got turned on to Aquifer, I couldn't believe how fast it heals when you get tattoos. That stuff is amazing, Randy.
Yeah,
Good
it's
call.
better than Vaseline because
Good
it does
call.
have something else in there. But boy, I've still got like a couple of big tubs like this of it in my cabinet right now.
Yeah, really, really good call. I'm trying to scroll backwards to find a comment that JP made, and there's just so many with all 10 platforms being aggregated in our interface here. But JP, part of our mod team, and the guy works tirelessly on survival dispatch stuff, is he's going to sponsor 10 paid members to Remnant as well.
Very cool.
So Manly's got 10, I got 10, JP's got 10. Send an email to support. Yep. Send an email, support@survivaldispatch.com. There's 30 free memberships, paid memberships for Survival Dispatch Remnant. And all you got to do is put Remnant in the subject line, and I'll get that looked after either tonight after the podcast or first thing in the morning.
So there's one other thing I want to add, because people don't really think of this, is saline, right? To have some saline in a, oh shoot, I forgot the word, but like what are bandages? So you don't get infected. They're sterile. You want to get some sterile saline, because even now when I'm doing wound care, I use a wound care cleaning stuff on it, but then I rinse it off with the saline at the end. And anytime you have to rinse a wound off, you would want to use saline or some type of a sterile water, because water carries bad things too. So
good point. Yeah, really good point. Hey, Randy, I want you to just mention one more thing. The importance of having a Sharpie and using it to mark up the person that you put a tourniquet on.
So yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it got carried away. But if you put a tourniquet on someone, one of the things you have to do is, believe it or not, put a T on their forehead so that anybody sees them afterwards, they will see that. You put the date and time that you put that tourniquet on there. And that is a standard operating procedure, whether you're a medic in the civilian world or a medic in the military. You have to notate that on the patient that you put a tourniquet on them, so all the other first responders or medics or doctors that see them afterwards will see that right off the bat.
Yeah, but thanks for expanding on that. Appreciate that. So Jeff, just work with me here. Imagine this scenario, right? So you've got, the shit's hitting the fan, and whether they be, the adversary like jihadis, or whether they be opportunistic criminals, and they come into the suburbs, let's say, to attack people like us, what should a family plan look like? Like, how should they structure their first hour? We won't go beyond that, but in the first hour, what does the average family do? Lives in the suburbs, who's listening on the radio or seeing it on the internet? Maybe they got a survival dispatch emergency notification, whatever. What do they do as soon as they find out in the first hour?
Well, first thing I would do, especially if it's in the evening, turn off all the lights. That way you don't look like you're home. If your lights are on in your house and people are outside of your house, they can see you. You can't see them. So that at least evens the odds a bit. If depending on if you got little kids, yeah, you want to put them in the safest room in the house so you can better defend them. If you've got older kids, if you've got teenagers, young adults, hopefully you have enough weapons for everybody, because you need to cover the whole house. You can't just stand at the front door, because they'll just come in the back door, or they'll smash a window down the hall or something. So you need to be able to respond, and you need to have hopefully enough people so that you're not doing it all by yourself. But if you're not going to bug out, which a lot of times you're not, because home is where you want to be, you need to have a defense plan for your house. I'll cover this side, you cover that side, you cover the front, I cover the back, or whatever. And have people who are prepared mentally to do that. If someone comes in your home, their rights ended at your threshold. Done. Yeah. End of story.
Yeah, good point. Good point. 100%. So one of the things that I wanted to throw out there in this section, and I won't dwell on it too long because y'all have heard me speak to it many times, but you got to have communication tools beyond a cell phone. Like a cell phone is not an SHTF or emergency comms plan at all. So, a lot of people say, well, go buy, a Baofeng radio or whoever's radio sort of thing. I'm just going to tell you this straight up again for the umpteenth time. When it says 30-mile range, 35-mile range, that's a laboratory calculation. In an urban environment, especially with a stock antenna, you're going to get less than a mile out of a UV5R on average. There's always going to be outliers. And you can change out to a better antenna like one of the Nagoya 771s for another $20, costs more than the UV5R. And it might get you another half a mile sort of thing. So I want to recommend one thing really quickly. If you go to DX Engineering, and I have like zero relationship with them, all of the comm stuff that we do with very few exceptions in between, we go out, we buy everything. And that way our, opinion isn't, skewed by somebody paying us or giving us free stuff or anything like that. So DX Engineering has a fiberglass mast that we bought. And I want to say it was about $200 plus $100 in shipping. So $300, it's 50 feet high. And it's in sections. You put up a section that has a clamp, you put up a section, put a clamp. It's got guy wires set up for it. So you can stabilize it. One person could put it up and take it down in about 10 minutes. Okay. If you're going to have UHF radios like GMRS, Baofengs, blah, 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 height matters for your distance because it's line of sight. It'll kind of work through some foliage to a certain extent, but nothing beyond that. Wherever your home base is, you got to have a mobile radio. So a mobile would be one that goes in your truck, for example. You can mount them or attach them to power supplies in your house with a big antenna. Then you can give people radios out in the field. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, 2026 SHTF comms part 1 and 2 have been published. Part 2 is Guardians only until Sunday. Then it'll be available to the public. There are links to everything in there. There's videos in there. If you can find the HYS 25 watt GMRS walkie-talkies, let me tell you, they've got some legs and they can stretch it out with a mast, like a 50-foot mast. We get an easy 10 miles from a base station out to a walkie-talkie, those HYS ones. But don't go and buy radios and go, oh yeah, let's get 35-mile range, I'm good to go. You're not good to go. That's all there is to it. So you got to have something in place for comms. And so instead of drumming on about this, just go to survivaldispatch.news, 2026 SHTF comms, just punch it in the search box. The first one is all on satellite options, what they cost, what we tested, what we recommend. And again, the second one, if you're a paying Guardian, you can access it now. It's been up for, I don't know, a week or something like that. And if you're not a paying Guardian, wait till Sunday. You'll have free access to it. And then the mother of the 2026 series, which is part 3, shortwave HF, the Walking Dead solution, we're probably going to shoot that not this weekend, but the following weekend. And it'll probably be up on our Substack the following weekend for Guardians and the following weekend for public. So that's the comm side of thing. Randy, coming back to you, let's talk about communities again. And you're in a big community, but you can use your community as an example if you want. I'm curious what you think. Like if the word went out, holy shit, we're under this mass attack. Let's say it's like, for now, my sometimes just kicking in Red Dawn. You got a Red Dawn style of situation happening. Realistically, how many men would it take to defend your neighborhood, which again is what, several thousand homes? And then for our neighborhood, which is a tenth of that, we just cut the number in 10. How many men need to be, and women? I mean, we got Sarah in our group, she's probably the best shot out of every Guardian out there. But what's the manpower needed to defend the neighborhood?
In my opinion, we got 4,000 homes. So if we took a person out of a fourth of 1,000 men, and probably depending on what we're talking about, in a real dire situation, it might be more than that. because, but I would, because this thing, I don't know at this point, back in 2020 and 2021, when I was riding mountain bikes, like on a weekly, several times a week, there were times that the trails were closed because of weather. I would ride around this neighborhood. And at that point, it was about 7.5 miles around the perimeter. It's bigger now.
Okay.
So I don't know how, and that's why I say 1,000 people, because I don't know how big what the mileage of the perimeter is. I know, that we don't have a fence or a wall all the way around it either. Not even close. There's really none. There's a couple here and there. So, there'd be, if we had to close this neighborhood off, or basically where we could, secure our own neighborhood,
Okay.
it would take a lot of work. It would take a lot of work because, again, you want to limit how many access points you have, which will be inconvenient for everybody, but it's just for safety measures. And then you would definitely want to be able to wall off, regardless of what the political is on walls right now for protecting your country. You would want to do that in your neighborhood for sure. And I would say 1,000 men easily.
I didn't expect the number to be that big. That's a big, and you would know, for those of you who aren't familiar, Randy is a Green Beret. So he's an elite warrior. Whew, that's a big number, man. Because like now I'm sitting here thinking we would, a tenth of that. We're a tenth of that size, our neighborhood. I don't know anywhere near 100 men in our community that would be capable of doing anything.
Well, you look at it this way. It's not going to happen, but just say hypothetically, you closed off your neighborhood and all of a sudden now this big, huge army showed up to besiege you.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't take very long for that perimeter to be getting chipped away, even if you had people all the way around it. Let's take the Alamo, for example, and sooner or later, the overwhelming force overpowered the whole thing. And that was that. So, yeah, you would need, a neighborhood this size for one, too, right? Because I would never say 100 because it's just too big of an area. Right. And then you want to have an overwhelming presence. You want to look scary. So you want to have as many people as you can get. I would do more than that if we could get people signed up. And I'm certain if this type of thing happened, that would happen because, of course, everybody wants to preserve themselves and their families and their neighborhood. Because if we let them in on that half of the neighborhood, you're not going to save this half either.
So all of those in favor of Randy going to talk to his neighbor after the podcast to sign him up for this program. Jeff, do you second the motion that Randy goes?
Yeah, I think so. I think Randy should have to go out and door to door today.
My problem is half these people are from California, so
they're fodder.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to have some of those too. Hey, y'all I want y'all to stand over there.
Is that kind of like, just watch the thing?
Buffer zone. Well, you got to have a buffer zone. They got to shoot something first, right? And
yeah.
If nothing else, you want to deplete your enemy of ammo.
I'm seeing consensus coming in from 10 different platforms. So tomorrow night, Randy, you're going to have to report.
Right. I'm on the job, right?
Tomorrow night, you're going to have to tell us, what happened tonight after the podcast when you went to sign up your neighbor, your wonderful neighbor.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Oh yeah, he's the first one I'm going to. Hey, buddy, old pal.
Right. So, Jeff, you get final say here on the final segment before we go into the practical payoff for our audience. And I want to know what soft indicators your average American should be watching for, before there's any coordinated attacks or terrorist attacks potentially in their area. And I'm just going to say one thing, suspicious surveillance. And we've had this happen in our neighborhood way too many times now. And so much so that a few weeks ago, Cindy and I were walking the dogs 11 o'clock at night. There's no traffic out. We live in, small town USA on the edge of town in an older established neighborhood. And I just felt like somebody was following us. And I turned around and here's this guy about 30 years old, 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds on an orange bicycle riding so slow that he's weaving back and forth so it'll stay upright. And at that point in time, he was about 200 feet behind us. So I told Cindy, I said, look, we're going to turn around up here and let this clown catch up. So he caught up, and she says to him, how are you doing, to see what his reaction was. And you could tell it threw him off, and he started gibbering in Arabic. And that's when I hit him in the face with the LEP flashlight, and he almost fell off the bike and took off. This is just like Sesame Street when they have you and you're a kid and they say, which one doesn't belong? That guy didn't belong. He's not from our neighborhood, and you got to pay attention to that stuff. But Jeff, the balance of segment 3 is all you.
Well, yeah, if someone's going to attack your neighborhood, they're probably going to case it first. So be on the lookout for people who don't belong, and especially people who don't belong but come back multiple times. And like I've said before, write stuff down so that, you know, is that the same car I saw before? Write it down. Get the license plate number. Describe the driver. You know, was there a particular bumper sticker? Is there a dent? Is there a cracked window, a cracked windshield? You know, get some distinguishing features of the vehicle so that you can tell, okay, yeah, that is the same one that came through last week. And trust your gut. If it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, pay attention to that.
So I got to ask you a quick question on that. Why do people ignore that? Why do they ignore their gut feeling? Because it happens frequently.
Because they try to be logical, and you know, and they're okay. I'm an educated person. That, you know, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this. Yeah, it could be, but it could also be a bad guy. And if you treat it like a bad guy and you get the hell out of there and you're wrong, what's the harm? If you treat him like a good guy and he's not, you have harm.
Yeah, so our good friend Tony Blauer, he's the preeminent subject matter expert in the entire world on sudden violence. He likes to say that every single person who went on to survive a sudden violence incident starts their story by saying something didn't feel right. And then they always ignore it. And then mean all of us, like as humans, we ignore it. So with that being said, Randy, it's that time of the night for the countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right. So it's time for the Carnival practical payoff. This is 1 skill, 1 item. Yeah. Above Randy, you can see the Carnival logo there. I've got this guy sitting beside me as well. We've got this stuff. I'm not going to tell you how much we've got. It's just, we'll keep that to ourselves. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not either.
1 skill, 1 item, 1 mindset shift related to tonight's topic that y'all can work on. Randy, I'll give you first kick of the can. A skill, an item, or a mindset shift?
Well, I guess I'm going to go with the theme because it's kind of followed us, although we haven't said it today, and it's a mindset shift. We have to stop thinking that this can't happen to us. Or if you get that gut feeling, you got to stop ignoring it. Because like Jeff said, if you don't ignore it and you go away and nothing happens, well, what harm was there? There isn't any. But if you ignore it and something happens, well, then you'll be sorry, and then you will pay the consequences. So really, the mindset shift is, hey, no one's coming to save you, and it can happen here.
Yeah, true story. Well said, Randy. So that leaves for you, Jeff, either an item or a skill.
A skill, I think, would be how to harden your home without it looking like a hardened home. We've talked about planting plants outside of windows, like agaves or thing, or robellini, something with big thorns, so people, discourage people from coming in your home. But at the same time, if something happens, you want to be able to get out if you have to, but you want to keep people from getting in. But the other thing is you want your home to look boring, so that people want it to be hard enough and boring enough that they're going to think it isn't worth it. Because a problem avoided is a problem solved. And if it sounds cruel, but if they go to your neighbor's house instead of yours, you've won that battle.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. Well said. So going to do like a very short sit rep tonight, maybe 10 minutes or so. And we've got to shut it down at the top of the hour here. But before we get to that, another shameless plug for Carnivalt, carnivalt.com. There's links down below in the description. 25-year shelf life, 100% American beef, chicken, and pork. No antibiotics, no mRNA, no histamines, no baloney, no junk. And it's raw meat. The only company who's really cracked this nut. This is phenomenal product. Meat prices are skyrocketing. You can sign up for a subscription as low as $99 a month. Lock in your price on American meat for 12 months. And if you don't lock in with a subscription and you just want to go do a one-time buy, use the code EATMEAT, all one word, get 10% off. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention our good friends at Wasatch Wagyu. I'm going to put a couple links in the live chat. Greg is running a couple specials. I unveiled them last night where he's got 50% off 2 different bundles, one of which includes the sticks, which, I like to show the strips, but these things are off the chain good as well, that you can also use our discount code on. So 50% off. So from $60 down to $30. Then use the code SD20, takes it down another $6 to $24 for packs of 10. I mean, you can't beat it with a dang stick. I will put links to Carnival. I will put links to Wasatch Wagyu specials. I'll note the discount code in there. But here's the thing. They don't pay us affiliate income, but they help us defer some very large fixed expenses to run Survival Dispatch. It's very, very much appreciated. And we couldn't do it without our paying guardians and without our sponsors like these guys. So with that being said, let's get over to the other stage here and get into this. Let me get my bookmarks up. I want to hear both your responses on this one. Raped.
That's a terrible story.
Yeah, this is just like incomprehensible. Hamas atrocities is the account on X. Rape before execution, that's the destiny reserved for this woman. 18 years old, comes from Kazvin in Iran. January 2026, she was arrested with her mother during the nationwide protests against the Islamic regime. Her only crime was asking for freedom and dignity. A few days later, the Revolutionary Court sentenced her to death by hanging. But before killing her, according to reports from activists and historical testimonies from Iranian prisoners, they intend to rape her. Why? Because she's a virgin. According to a distorted and barbaric religious belief, a virgin girl who is executed would go straight to paradise. For this reason, in the past and still today, virgin female prisoners are systematically raped before execution to send them to hell instead of paradise. This is a practice documented for decades and confirmed even by former officials of the regime itself. She is a girl like so many others with her whole life ahead of her, was about to be crushed by the Ayatollah's killing machine. Holy shit, bunch of savage barbarians. Randy, go ahead.
Well, and it's gang raped. That's the term, right? It's not just rape. They plan on gang raping her. And apparently they've done this before to other women. And you know how I feel about this. We've all seen the movie Man of Fire, right? I would turn into Man of Fire, Denzel, Creasy Bear. Creasy. I would turn into Creasy and I would go kill and remove anybody that had anything to do with it, anybody that profited off of it, anybody that even spread the story. Fix them all.
BFE.
Every one of them.
Jeff, your thoughts on this barbarity?
This is why I have no qualms with us bombing the living shit out of the Ayatollahs and the IRGC and all those people. Not the average, Iranians. Most Iranians don't like this crap. But the ones in charge, the ones behind this kind of stuff, vaporize them.
Yeah, I second the motion. So next one up, Randy. I'm guessing that none of us.
That's a full load there, buddy. That guy's carrying a full load. That's a dangerous plane right there.
This is not good news, though.
No,
the United States. No, The United States Air Force just closed the training pipeline for new A-10 pilots. It's not a footnote. It's the beginning of the end of a capability we're going to miss the first time it's not there. And Supersonic Redhead says, I've watched what happens when things go wrong on the ground. What are your thoughts of that? I mean, golly.
Well, I think even before Desert Storm, but I know before we went into Iraq, they were already talking about this. And then after Iraq, and it was on it again. They've been talking about retiring this plane for quite some time. The problem is how effective this plane actually is when it comes to boots on the ground and actually making somebody surrender. This plane now, it's not a fast-moving plane, so it can get shot down fairly easily and certainly by other aircraft. But we haven't really had to face too many other aircraft with it yet. If we got into a scrape with China and Russia, we would lose some. But here's reality. We don't have the plane. We don't have another asset to pick up the slack that it's picking up. And people say, oh, well, we got F-35s and F-22s and all that. Yeah, we do. Those are a completely different set of target sets. They don't do the same job. They can, yes, but it's not what they're designed to do. And they don't do it as effectively as this plane does. And the other part of it is I'm not even sure that an F-22 or an F-35, maybe with Iran, but I know all the way through GWAT, they never flew one sortie, not one.
No shit. I didn't know that.
Zero. Well, because those planes are made to fight other planes. These are fighter jets. They're not, yes, they have all kinds of capabilities, but their number one gig is they're a fighter jet, and there's no other fighter jets up there in Iraq or Afghanistan, and there won't be in Iran. We've already decimated their Air Force. So that's over. And I don't know if they'll actually ever get rid of this, but it's no different than all the other things that we see that are effective and that work, that somehow our system seems to be purging for us at a critical juncture in time.
I would argue that that's not by mistake and that's by design. Jeff, do you want to weigh in on the A-10 Warthog?
Well, that's definitely going to affect Tucson. This is where we train them at Davis Mountain Air Force Base. They've been around since I was in college. I used to fly over. My best man at my wedding was an A-10 pilot. It's a great airplane, and what the Air Force hates it, but the Army loves it. So go figure.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I would say, Jeff, the Air Force doesn't really have to worry about what's on the ground and what's going on down there for the most part.
Exactly. Well, that's why they don't. The Air Force generals don't like it.
That's right.
There you go.
It's not pretty enough.
Yep. Or sexy.
And hence the name Warthog, right? So check this out. Islamists in Barcelona destroying anything they see. Why does Europe tolerate this? Because they want absolute chaos to get their one world government. 59 seconds. Look at this shit. Bunch of low IQ heathens, savages, barbarians that are not compatible with Western society at all. I think that's about enough of that. Jeff, I'll come to you quickly first for your thoughts on that.
Well, they look like they're riding, and you know what I say about riders.
Fair enough. BFE.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anybody in the audience who agrees with Jeff, BFE, put a 1 in the live chat. Randy?
Well, as a society, we used to take care of these folks, right? But somehow we've now become too soft. And it's no different than what we're looking here in our own country, where the judicial system and the justice system is letting criminals go left and right. And the more dangerous, the quicker they're letting them go. And, that's because now they know that they have bridled society. Any other time in history, certainly in the earlier 1900s, but certainly any time before that, this kind of thing happened and those people were in the wrong. Guess what happened? They were buried by that evening probably, or they were hung out to be an example of what happens to you when you do this kind of stuff for a week at a time. These people got dead right away, and we stopped doing that, and that is our problem. You're mute. You're on mute.
All right. This is a making it over the date, folks. Randy and I are tied 1-1 on the mute, and Jeff is leading the pack with a big fat 0.
But see, Jeff's got the shirt, the T-shirt. That's what everybody says. Jeff's on mute. You could probably make money off that T-shirt.
Oh my God, that's too fun. Well, I'd love to, but have you seen the royalties he charges? It's off the chain.
No.
Have a good lawyer.
Who could nobody can afford Jeff's royalties. He's not people like you are, Randy. TM Randy is. That's too funny. All right, next one up here. Here's more of this shit. Right, looks like Syria, but these are Birmingham locals spit roasting an animal on the side of the road, and BB Media asked, "Did it go woof woof or did it go meow meow?" Oh boy, man, these people and their shit with our.
It won't be a dog because dogs are unclean to them.
Well, fair enough. But let's watch a little bit of this for whatever the hell it is.
They're eating the dogs, eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people.
Gaffer, yes, my friend. I este coconelo pam 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 este le conelo pam 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 este le conelo pam pam pam.
All right, I pause that. It's making me dumber by the second.
I can't listen to that shit either. Holy crap.
Well, I didn't understand when people got up in arms about it the last time and tried to say that it probably isn't happening. It's all Trump. This is what they do in their own country, people.
Yeah.
This is what they do in their own country and many other countries. Not the Western ones, but all the rest. That's exactly what's going down.
They need to go back to those countries. This is not going to end well. It is not going to end well. Watch is going off. I got it on freaking mute. Jeff, do you want to add anything to the?
No, they're just
disgusting. Yep.
Hey, Randy, you got to work with me so that we can strategically try and catch Jeff on mute. There's no way that we can't let him wrap tonight up as the winner. That's just,
well, I think we let it get too far already. He's not going to put it back on mute because we're right here at the end.
Mark your calendars, like I said.
That's right.
Check
always tomorrow.
Yeah, boy, howdy.
I'm gonna wrap this up, man. I got 2 new baby javelina I gotta go look at.
We're right. This is the last one. A Mexican refinery has just exploded. The spontaneous combustibility of oil refineries must be caused by some sort of contagious virus. Let's all lock down and obey the evening news.
Well, oil refineries blow up.
So I don't think we need to watch the whole video.
It's a cracking tower. When you're taking crude oil and you're freaking boiling it, you're heating it to 600 degrees so you can separate all the components. It doesn't take much for that to go boom.
What do you reckon is behind all of these fires?
Bad maintenance.
Randy, what do you reckon is behind all of this?
Well, my brother happens to work in one of these, and so first of all, they're fairly safe. Yes, Jeff is right, but we've got the system worked out fairly well. Okay. And a lot of those people down there, like in, I don't know where this one is, but like the last one we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that's down there I'm from. And down there, the men, you either work in the plant or you work at, McDonald's or Walmart. Those are the most jobs are going to be in the plants. And that's where most of the men work there. Certainly your blue collar workers. My brother is one of those. His job depends on watching all of those gauges to ensure the fact that nothing goes wrong. So I don't know who's doing this, but I know at the last one there, as we mentioned, and the guy deleted it all. So we can't just pull it up here and show you. But you said you had seen it too. There was a guy that posted it was going to happen 24 hours before. Now, he named the wrong one, but they're right next to each other. They are very close in proximity. And then that happened. And he deleted all his posts, his entire account. So, yes, could it be simple that, this is bad maintenance? but generally that's not, in my experience, that's not how they run these plants. However, I haven't been in one in a while, but as I said, my brother works in one, and they take this stuff seriously. So I would say that, you know, it's hard to say because we don't have any proof. But as I said before, now this is 2. When's the last time we saw 2? Name that, what year, any time down there that happened, and
Well,
we would have to
Mexico.
go back a long
That's
time.
not in the United States.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Well,
you also got to realize, for the United States, our youngest refinery is 50 years old.
That's a fact.
We haven't built a refinery in 50 frickin' years. So crap wears out. Now they do a great job maintaining it and keeping it going, and even, you know, when there is a fire, there are fires at refineries all the time, but they're very good at keeping them limited and fixing them, repairing them. But, you know, Mexico, nothing against the Mexicans, but they don't exactly have the world's greatest track record when it comes to maintenance.
Go figure. Go figure.
Yeah, no, I can't argue that point, but I will just say that it seems to be happening more. And when we take into account that everything has happened, whether it's the food manufacturers to railroads to ships and to everything else, it's kind of a pattern.
Yeah.
The math, as far as the number of things like this that keep happening, is pretty extreme. Let's leave it at that. But last reminder, Survival Dispatch Remnant launches a week from Saturday. This is a cinematic audio podcast in a post-apocalyptic scenario. It'll be every Saturday and Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's narrated by yours truly. And you can go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, which is where our Substack is for this. And if you sign up as a paid member before we go live, it's only $5.60 a month or $56 a year. The general public will get all of the podcasts for free at 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday every weekend. And paid members will get early access. You'll get it midday. Plus, you will get an episode guide that goes with each one. I've written 104 episodes of this. I've been working on it for 6 months. I had the idea 12 months ago. Yes, it has a lot of entertainment value, but it also has a lot of survival and prepping lessons in it. I'm telling you, the first 2 shows are off the freaking chain. And if you sign up now, you get a pretty big discount.
So are those already online, the first 2? Like if we go on there, what I know that Manley said he saw something. So is there just like a little intro?
So if you go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, which is this website here, and you click on the image at the top, there's an article, a long article that describes describes the entire series, lays the groundwork for the first episode this week from Saturday, and then it'll be every
I'll go check it out this weekend.
So the podcast doesn't launch until a week from Saturday.
Yeah.
So those people who get in early get a 20% discount, and it's gonna be an awesome thing. Got a lot of people excited about it. But anyway, Jeff's got to get to his javelinas.
Yep.
I got a box of Wasatch Wagyu jerky that I have to eat. I just have to, or I go into the DTs. You know how it is. But
all right, take some pictures, Jeff.
I will.
We'll be back tomorrow evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Next episode in our Long War series, Jihadi Terrorists in America. Hospital systems overrun, the healthcare collapse. After tomorrow night, we're down to 8 episodes left in the Long War series. You have to stay tuned to see what happens after that. And if you want real-time intel instead of guessing, if you want to stay connected when others get isolated, get inside the Survival Dispatch News Guardians Network at survivaldispatch.news. It's where we pull everything together. This is Chris Evans signing off. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our military. God bless America. Enjoy the closing video. It's another brand new one.
they try to silence, they wanna shut me down. They fill my mind with hatred, but I stand for the crown. I wanna walk with Moses and cross the ocean floor. I wanna take the narrow where saints have gone before. Shadows crawl from the depth, their will to silence our breath. Demons cheer when we die, but in death saints arise. We take our stand, our souls will strive, for the darkness wants us, dead or alive. The road I walk is lonely, they despise the holy path, but I travel with the Father, and they will feel His wrath.
I wanna stand with David and watch the giant fall. I wanna be prepared, I will answer his call.
Shadows crawl from the depth, their will to silence our breath. Demons cheer when we die, but in death saints arise. We take our stand, our souls will strive, for the darkness wants us, dead or alive.
We are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. Their sacrifice echoes in the wilderness. From the ancient desert to this final age, we turn the final righteous warring page.
Shadows crawl from the depth, their will to silence our breath. Demons cheer when we die,